Okay, hope the screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
MVC request flow. If you understand this, okay, if you understand the request flow, then there is nothing there inside the, okay, this Spring MVC. So understanding of this one is important. Spring MVC request flow. Okay, so how that requests are exactly, okay, executed, okay, whenever we are talking about the Spring MVC. Okay, we guys already have discussed that Spring MVC. Okay, it is the one of the model, okay, one of the module of the Spring framework, okay, which is used to develop the web applications. So whenever we guys have to develop the web application, whenever we guys have to develop the web application, that is what application which will be get executed on the with the help of the browser. So through the browser only we will send the request. Okay, it will go to the server. There actually we have the server, web server. Okay, and that will process your request and then we will get the response. So whenever we have to develop this one, what exactly the request flow? So I can simply say here, okay, there is very first component here. Okay, we can just simply understand that. Okay, so I just here, okay, I'm going to create one component here small, okay, and I'm going to call it as the browser, okay, or it is the client. Okay, I just call it as the browser. Okay, in our case we can just call it as the client. Okay, or it is also called as a web client. It is also called as a web client. So browser acts as the client here. Okay, browser acts as the client over here. So you can use any browser. So through that browser we are going to send the request and the responses. So whenever we want to send any request, whenever we want to send any request, okay, there is very important component, I can simply say. Okay, that is what I just say, dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher dispatcher servlet actually. Okay, this is what the dispatcher servlet actually. This dispatcher servlet acts as the front controller. It is also called as a front controller. It is also called as a front controller. So that front controller will be there, I can simply say here. Okay, front controller. Okay, so dispatcher servlet, or it is also called as a front controller. So I can simply say every request and the response to this Spring MVC base web application, every request and response, okay, every request and response to the Spring MVC base application is routed through dispatcher servlet only. So dispatcher servlet is the only point of contact to the browser or to the client. That means what? Every request coming to this one, your application will first go to the dispatcher. Will first go to the dispatcher servlet, and every response which is going back, every response going back to the client, or we can say the browser. Okay, that it will be go to the dispatcher servlet. So I just simply say when request is coming, it will comes to the dispatcher servlet. Actually, what is exactly the dispatcher servlet? I already told you. Dispatcher servlet is a very standard servlet, which is the very standard servlet, standard class, standard Java class provided by the Spring MVC, provided by the Spring MVC, which is used to handle the request and responses. That means that whatever the request coming and whatever the response going, okay, that will be went through the dispatcher servlet only. Dispatcher servlet only, we can say. Hope you guys are getting what I mean to say. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So this dispatcher servlet actually, this dispatcher servlet, we need to configure inside the web.xml file. We need to configure this into the web.xml file. We do have the web.xml file. Okay, we call it as the deployment descriptor. We call it as the deployment descriptor, where we exactly going to, or we have the, okay, we have this dispatcher servlet have been configured inside the web.xml file. Okay, so whenever we are sending the request, whenever we are sending the request, okay, that will go to the dispatcher servlet, okay, which has been configured, inside the, web.xml file as a servlet only. So servlet, you already know how to configure the servlet. Just servlet tag we can use inside the web.xml file, okay, inside the web apps. Servlet name, servlet class. Okay, servlet tag will be get closed. Then here servlet mapping, again servlet name and servlet URL pattern. Okay, and then servlet mapping is get closed. So through that one, okay, like that one only we are going to configure the dispatcher servlet. Remember, only inside the Spring MVC application only this dispatcher servlet we are going to configure inside the web.xml file. If you go ahead with the Spring Boot application, if we go ahead with a Spring Boot application, in a Spring Boot application, okay, that dispatcher servlet is been internally or implicitly configured. We as a programmer, we don't need to worry about that anything. Okay, we don't need to worry about anything more. So it will be get simply, okay, internally get configured according to the dependencies we have added. So remember this part. It will be there to handle the request and responses, okay, into the Spring Boot application as well as inside the Spring MVC application. Now talking about this one, actually dispatcher servlet as a front controller, what exactly, what simply say, following will be the task performed by dispatcher servlet, I just say. So here I can just write here, as we have the request get here, so we got as a dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet acts as a front controller. Okay, dispatcher servlet acts as the front controller. We need to configure it. We need to configure it in a web.xml file. Okay, web.xml file. So I can simply say the following are the tasks performed by dispatcher servlet. Because understanding of this one is very important. If you understand this, then nothing is there into the, okay, into the Spring MVC. So because why I came to here, when a request came from the browser, okay, it dispatcher servlet have received this. So that means what here we need to understand exactly what are the tasks done by this one. So here very first thing actually dispatcher servlet will do for you guys, okay, or into the web application, that it read the servlet name. It reads the servlet name configured in okay web.xml file. Okay, because whenever we are going to register any servlet inside the web.xml file, okay, we have to give the servlet name. Okay, so that name dispatcher servlet will get from the web.xml file. Okay, web.xml file. According to this one, it will try to find, and load. What I'm saying, find and load. It will, according to this name of the servlet, actually, according to this name of the servlet, Okay, it has been said that it will try to find out and load the servlet name. Servlet, okay, I just say name dash servlet dot XML file. Dot XML, okay, file from server actually, or on the server. So here you will understand, sir. Okay, it get the request. Okay, it received the request. Okay, as it received the request, okay, it is getting that name of the servlet which has been configured inside the web.xml file. From that name actually, okay, it is going to find and load servlet name dash servlet.xml file. So here your question might be come here. What is exactly this servlet name dash servlet.xml file? So try to remember here. Servlet name dash servlet.xml file is the Spring configuration file. Is the Spring configurations file. So Spring related configurations we are going to put inside the servlet name dash servlet.xml file, and it have the very standard name. It have the very standard name that whatever the name we guys have given while configuring the dispatcher servlet inside the web.xml file, that name dash servlet.xml file should be the name of your XML file only. Okay, this is the very standard naming convention, I can simply say. Servlet name dash servlet.xml file. Servlet name is nothing but the name of the dispatcher servlet which is been configured inside the web.xml file. Okay, so that name, and that is the reason actually in this dispatcher servlet will read the servlet name. Okay, so that as it get the servlet name, through that one it will get, okay, it will find and load this particular file where we have configured, okay, the Spring related configurations, I guess. Spring related configuration. So it is easy. Till now it has been observed that whenever we have to write the code, I need the two XML files here into the Spring MVC application. One is web.xml file where we can configure the dispatcher servlet, and we need the another one XML file, that is what the servlet name dash servlet.xml file. No doubt we can change this name to, okay, we can change this name to, but here for sake of understanding we are going to consider how we can change the name of this file and the location of this file. We will see later. But here you need to write exactly same name, okay, of servlet.xml file to your Spring configuration file, I can simply say. So this is second task actually performed by the dispatcher servlet, I can simply say. Okay, now here after reading this one, after reading this servlet, okay, after reading this one, what exactly it is going to do? Okay, it create the Spring context. It create Spring context, I say. It create the Spring context. It how to create the Spring context. That means what here? Okay, it will create the web application context. That means it will create a web application, okay, context. You guys know that this will act as the container. This will act as the container to handle the, okay, web applications, okay, flow. So here this will be the container actually. So it will create the Spring context, we say. It will create the Spring context. Okay, then after creating web application context even, it will okay, it will manage user defined controllers life cycle. It will manage the user defined controllers, like a login controller can be there, registration controller can be there, display controller can be there, employee controller can be there. So there can be a multiple backend controllers. So that backend controllers it is going to manage. It is going to manage that one. So these are the things. With that one, it how to perform the other tasks too related to the view. So we'll come back again from this one. So here we observe that whenever we get the request, whenever it get the request, okay, these are the thing internally dispatcher servlet have managed. Okay, with that one, this request when it comes, the request actually, to the particular controller. There can be a, like I say, login controller can be there. Okay, there can be a, I can simply say there can be a employee controller can be there. Okay, or it can be a user controller can be there. So that might be there. So it have to find that, it have to invoke that one, that particular controller. So for that purpose, actually, it takes the help of, there is one more component over here. There is one more component over here. We call it as the handler mapping. Okay, we call it as the handler mapping. Handler mapping. So actually this handler mapping is again the internal component. So when a request is coming to the dispatcher servlet, this dispatcher servlet will send that request, or it will consult with the handler map. Because see, whenever we are getting any request, whenever we are getting any request, that request will be for any of the controller. It can be for any of the controller, but there can be a multiple controller. You can simply observe here. I'm just going to write here. One controller is there. Okay, it is one controller. Then another controller can be there. Okay, then there can be another controller. So many controllers can be there. So many controllers. So for example, user controller. So these are the controllers, I say. Controllers. Okay, in that controller, like user controller. Okay, then it can have the employee controller. Okay, or there can be a login controller and so on. Like that one, such controllers will be there. So whenever any request is coming, okay, that is for the controller only. But okay, it will first go to the dispatcher servlet. Okay, that is front end controller. These are the back end controllers. I say. These are the back end controllers. So as request coming, there can be hundreds of the back end controller. Front end controller only one as a dispatcher servlet, but there can be hundreds of the back end controller. So how dispatcher servlet will understand that which controller how to be get invoked? So by consulting with the handler mapping, it will get the information about the controller. So here it is what the next step. Okay, it is what the next step actually. So dispatcher servlet will get this one, okay, at the application deployment type only. So it will be, if I consider this will be happen at the 0th place, even before request is coming, it is happen. Now this is very first that request came one. So as a request come, okay, that same request, it is been transferred to the handler mapping, and handler mapping will find out the exact controller. Okay, so it will get the controller, which controller they have to, okay, I just say which controller they have to execute. So that information will get to the dispatcher. Now dispatcher servlet here, actually that is the request. Okay, so that request they need to pass there. So this is what exactly the request. Okay, that request, it is passed to the handler mapping. It will get the response. Okay, here, okay, as a controller. Now it will, they have the multiple controllers, hundreds of the controller, but with the help of the handler mapping, okay, they get that exact controller. Now from here, your request is going to pass to the exact controller. So there can be any controller, okay, that any controller. So there your request is going to be get passed. Okay, so here you can observe here, this is the fourth step I just say. Okay, when it is came to here, okay, that the same request we are going to pass, okay, to the exact controller. Now that controller, there can be user controller, employee controller, login controller, or any other controller, that it request goes there. From this controller, okay, execution control can be go to the service layer, it can be go to the DAO layer. Okay, through that one it will communicate with the database. So don't worry about it. That is not a part of this. So controller layer, okay, so, sorry, that DAO layer and the service layer, these are out of scope of this one. But there might be you have the here there might be, I can simply say the service, okay, and there can be another one, that is what the DAO, okay, and there will be a database, okay, there will be a database, okay, that database will going to communicate. So just for sake of understanding here, I just going to tell you that as a request is coming here, okay, that request will be get passed to the service layer, I just. This is what I just say, service. Okay, from the service, it will go to the DAO, data access object. Then it will go to the database. It is the DB. Okay, there it will communicate. Again, result will come back to the DAO. Then it will come to the service. From service, it will come to the backend controller. Okay, and as backend controller, okay, that backend controller will prepare the view. Okay, it will process that one, and after processing, okay, okay, they have to give here, okay, which one is the view exactly, okay, they have to send back to the this one. Okay, so while returning this one, this is, I just say, fifth one. While giving this one, it have to give the fifth one. So what is the fifth step here? So here, see, as request come to the controller will communicate with the service or the DAO to the database, and it will prepare the model and the view. So here it is been said that model and a view. Model and a view.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please say that again?
Okay, so model and a view. Okay, it will be get given here into the from your backend controller only. So model means what? The data which you guys have to display on the browser. Remember here, model represent the data here which you guys have to display on the browser, and view is the name of a file. View is the name of a file that can be HTML or that can be a JSP, on which you have to display that data as a response on the browser. Okay, so when a request goes to the backend controller will receive that, process that, and it will go to the service DAO database and again come back. And when it again come back, okay, it will prepare your model and the view. It will prepare the model and view, and no worry that we have the class as a model and view itself. With the help of that one, we can give the data which you guys have to send back to the browser as a client, okay, and on which that data is going to be get displayed. So that both the things we are going to pass. Okay, we are going to pass from here. So as it comes here to the dispatcher servlet, now dispatcher servlet knows which one data I have to send back as a response and which one JSP or the HTML I have to send back as a response state. Okay, but there can be a multiple response pages. Okay, there can be a multiple, because like here you can just simply observe here there can be a multiple response pages or HTML pages, that is which I just say views. Okay, I just say views. We have the views. Okay, so there can be a multiple views. Okay, so from which one view actually they have to, like here there might be chance that this controller will return one name of the file, but that file is not present here in the server. On the server that file is not present. So how that dispatcher servlet can send back? So before sending back that particular view, okay, dispatcher servlet should understand, okay, that, okay, this is a particular view, okay, I have to send back and it is present there. Okay, so because dispatcher servlet got the name model and a view, but they have to check, is it that particular view is present there. So for that purpose, actually there is another one component here. Okay, it is not compulsory because we have the default to. It is called as a view resolver. It is called as a, I just say here, I'm just giving the name as a view resolver. View resolver. Okay, in our case I'm going to use internal resource view resolver. Okay, but it is the general term I'm using. Default even they have. So when that it get the dispatcher servlet, now dispatcher servlet is not aware about is that particular view is present or not. So dispatcher servlet will consult with a view resolver. Dispatcher servlet will consult with a view resolver, okay, to know about which JSP and okay which JSP I have to send back as a response. Okay, so here actually in our case I'm going to use, again I'm telling, internal resource view resolver, which is again the standard resolver we can configure, but even the default view resolvers also are there. Even though we have not configured, it will use and it will select the particular view. So this is what exactly the step I just say. Okay, that is what the sixth one. So it will consult with view resolver, and accordingly then the dispatcher servlet will go to that particular views, okay, and return that particular view. So that is what here I just say seventh one. It is the seventh one. So we'll get that particular view. So see, actually from that example like username password point of view, if we have the successful username password or login process is done, we are going to write the welcome.jsp, and if there is error.jsp, so how they are going to communicate or they are going to comes to know about this one. So here with the help of this one, so we get that okay view resolver, and with the help of that one they got exact views. Okay, as now dispatcher servlet know exactly okay which one is the view and which one is the data I have to send back, and then that it will send the response back to the client okay with that particular page, and it will be get displayed. So this is exactly the request flow. This is exactly the request flow in a Spring MVC application. Spring MVC application. So if you want to like assume like you have the username and the password. So assume you enter the username, okay, like this one only, okay, which I explain over here. Okay, like this one only. I just send the username password. Okay, where it is? Login. Okay, so like for example, just I do have to perform the login process. So assume username password. Okay, I have just sent from here. It will come to the dispatcher servlet. From the dispatcher servlet, actually to handle, okay, that means to handle that request, to check whether entered username and password are correct or not, they have the controller. So login controller or any other controller can be there. So for that one, they have to go there. But dispatcher servlet will not directly understand which one controller, backend controller they have to go. So as request comes to the dispatcher servlet, it will consult to the handler mapping. Handler mapping told them that okay, this is the controller. So request will go to that login controller. In login controller, we have the methods where we have put it that logic request response handling logic. So we'll get that data username and password, and that data will put into an object, and that object will go to the service. It will go to the DAO. Through the DAO, we can by using the JDBC or by using the JPA ORM, okay, or by using the Spring Data JPA, it will just go to the database and enter user details, that is username and password are correct or not. So if they are correct, it will return that value, or else that they will inform to the backend controller. According to that result, yes or no, backend controller will prepare the model and a view. Because if the username and password are correct one, then it will create the model, okay, and a view with a welcome.jsp. And if the entered username and password are not correct, these are incorrect one, okay, then it will prepare the model and view with error.jsp. It will come to here. Now dispatcher servlet get accordingly either success or the failure. So it will consult with a view resolver and accordingly find out that particular view, and that view will be get passed to the browser. So here we will get the message on the welcome.jsp or on the error.jsp, depends on exactly okay what is been written by your dispatcher servlet. Hope you guys are getting.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any question, any doubt here?
No, sir.
Okay.